Hello and welcome to a short video. In this video I'll show off an alternate bamboo farm that's based from one Etho showed in his video in 2020. This farm changes the timings of the clock and a few other aspects to make it a little bit more bone meal efficient and a little bit faster. Let's see what the farm performance is. So each farm is using 10 pistons and 6 dispensers. They both have a bone meal feeding system, but in this case we've got it turned off. We have a look. I've preloaded each of the dispensers with 2 stacks of bone meal each on both sides. And we have one switch to turn both of them on together. So we'll run the farms for 20 seconds and then have a look not only about how much bamboo they've managed to produce, but also how much bone meal they've used in producing that bamboo. Okay, starting the clock now. We'll just let this run over 20 seconds. As you can see, they're both pumping away at the bamboo. They appear to be running very similar rates. We're about 10 seconds in now. And we'll get ready to stop. In 4, 3, 2, 1, stop. Okay, that's about 20 seconds. So first we'll look at bamboo consumed. Now for this farm over here, because it's pulsing the pistons on an observer tick, it does seem to shed bamboo occasionally. So we're going to be a little bit friendly to it and collect that bamboo and still count it towards its total. But we can see that we've used all but 29 of the bone meal. So that's 4.5 stacks, 1 stack and a half used up. This is reasonably consistent across the dispensers. There's a little bit of randomization between them, but for the most part there's 29 bamboo in each dispenser. Not quite sure whether there's a little bit less in this one, but there you have it. If we go over to this one, we can see that we have nearly a full stack of bamboo, full stack of bone meal in each dispenser still. In some cases more than a full stack. So we can see that the bone meal usage has been significantly less. So what about yield? So we know this farm used less bamboo, used less bone meal. Did it get as much bamboo? So we'll just collect on both the chests. We can see that the design on the right, that's using the single tick clock and pistons done by an observer, has collected 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 and a bit stacks. And that's being generous, including the bits that have got thrown out. Now this design uses a slightly different clock. And we'll just collect the bamboo for it now. We can see that it's collected nearly 9 stacks. So not only has this collected more bamboo for a given time period, it's used less bone meal doing so. Now to go quickly through the design. I'm not going to do a block by block tutorial. If somebody else wants to do that, I'll happily link it in my description. Please post in the comments. But most of the farm's easily visible. We have 6 dispensers pointing at the bamboo. We have hoppers feeding from barrels into those dispensers. That wasn't used in this test. You could use the same feed system as Etho's design if you want. We have what is a 6-tick clock, 3 ticks on, 3 ticks off. That's fed to an observer, which drops the tick rate by half. So 2 ticks off, 1 tick on. For every 3rd tick the dispensers fire. We're then using observers to slow down the tick before it goes into the side of this comparator in subtract mode. So delay by 1, delay by 2, into the side of the comparator in subtract mode. You just have a single point container here, so this is a composter with 1 item in it. You could equally use a barrel or a cake or any other thing that a comparator can read that doesn't interact with the redstone signal. In front of the comparator we have a repeater. which feed up into a redstone tower into the side of our pistons, and each piston has a glass block currently extended so that when they fire, they push over whatever bamboo has grown into the water stream with a soul sand block, water source blocks all the way up, and into the hoppers to move it into the chests. And that's pretty much the entire design. There's nothing too behind the scenes or anything like that. So let's talk about why the behavior of these two farms is different. To do that, we need a little bit of a lesson around how pistons interact with redstone signals. Now, in the Etho design, what we have is we have a comparator as a 2-tick clock, 1 tick on, 1 tick off. This is feeding directly into the dispenser, so the dispensers fire on every second tick. And there's an observer, so that's firing every time that changes. Now, this would be continuously, except for the fact that observers can't fire continuously, so it's still every second tick. So every second tick those fire, and every second ticks these pistons fire. But as they fire, since they're only 1 tick long, they change whether they're leaving the glass block over or not. If we just start the farm again, we can see the difference. So you can see that the glass block in some instances are retracted, and some instances they're not. Whereas in the farm over here, the glass blocks always come back with the pistons. That's the main difference of the farm. So if we have a look over here, we can see that if you're firing a piston and you're changing it every tick, on off, in a 2-tick clock, your piston retraction is actually running on 4 ticks. And that's because when it retracts here, it actually leaves the block behind and won't pull it back again until this one fires and pulls it back. So your piston is actually running on 4 ticks, not 2. If we were to slow that down to a 4-tick clock, we'd have exactly the same piston behavior. The difference now is the dispenser is now in line with it. Now, the reason that is important is while the common wisdom is that bone meal isn't used up from a dispenser when growing a plant, there are some cases where that isn't true. So here we have a dispenser with some bone meal. We have some bamboo that can't grow. If we trigger that, it is using the bone meal, and that's because the reason the bamboo can't grow is it's blocked at the top, not because it's reached its growth limit. So the bone meal is still used up. And that's why the farm on the right is wasting bone meal. Because every second time the dispensers are firing, the glass blocks are actually in the way. So we could slow this down to a 4-tick clock and solve the bone meal wastage issue. But that's actually also going to slow down our farm. So now, yes, we're not wasting any bone meal, but we're not collecting bone meal as quickly. So ideally what we actually want is a 3-tick clock, where it's off for 1 tick, on for 2, so that the pistons are firing off for 1, on for 2, and this means the glass block always follows the piston head. It also means that there is only 1 tick of space where the dispensers need to grow the bone meal, and then it's immediately harvested. And that's why we are getting faster rates on the farm on the left and lower bone meal usage. So let's talk about piston clocks. So here we have the clock that's used in the farm on the right. It's a 1-tick clock. And as we can see, the piston's moving very quickly, but if we watch the glass block, we can see it's not really moving as quickly as the piston. Even with the observer, we can see it doesn't actually change it. It's still moving about the same speed as before. And we can see this by putting in a 2-tick clock, 2 ticks on, 2 ticks off. This isn't leaving the glass block behind, but you can see that it's moving at approximately the same rate for the glass block. So the piston's moving at half the rate, but effectively the glass is moving at the same rate. What we want is actually to move the glass faster. And this is the clock from the farm on the left. In this one, we can see that the piston is moving faster, but in this case it's keeping the glass with it. And this is why the farm on the left moves faster. So what's happening? We have a 6-tick clock, 3 ticks on, 3 ticks off running here. We have an observer that watches the state change. So every state change on to off to on causes a pulse, which means it's pulsing every 3 ticks. And in this case, we've got it through a pulse extender. So instead of 1 pulse every 3 ticks, it's 2 tick pulses every 3 ticks. And this runs the glass block attached to the sticky piston as fast as it is possible without getting into zero tick mechanics. Now, one way of doing this is extending the signal. The other way of doing it would be knotting the signal. So if you think about it, if you've got 1 tick on, 2 ticks off, and you invert it, then that'd be 1 tick off, 2 ticks on, which is the same as having 2 ticks on, 1 tick off. However, we can't use a torch for this one because if we tried, even though torches do invert signals, the torch isn't going to recognize the off signal, it's just too short. So we'll just stop these pistons for a moment and start talking about the alternate way of doing a NOT gate. The comparators can be used as a NOT gate. So if a comparator has a feed in and is in some track mode, you can effectively use it as a NOT gate. The difference is the comparator can react to single tick off ticks, whereas the torch cannot. However, we still have a problem. If we simply have a comparator on its own feeding into a redstone source, it will never move the piston off. And that's because, for whatever reason, a single on tick to the side of a comparator feeding into redstone dust does not appear to change the state of a piston. However, if we change the redstone dust to a repeater, or simply put a repeater in front of the comparator, we have our NOT gate, but we have a NOT gate that can respond to observer pulses. So that observer pulse is now able to trigger the NOT condition where it wasn't before. And that's basically the sum of it.